say a few words? We lost a lawyer yesterday, and most of us have known Kathy for lots of years, but I'd like for John to actually say to that word about what she has done for the Republican Party.
Well, I wasn't expecting to speak for Kathy, and there are probably some people who are a lot closer friends with her here than I was, but I did get to talk to her when she went into hospice, I guess, and it really hurts to lose Kathy. Kathy Ross passed away this morning, I believe at 10 a.m. I was told. Okay, well, I'm just going to locals on the text, but Bob says 7:30. But she went to be with our Lord, and Kathy has always been a mighty warrior for the Republican cause. Every time I was at the polls, she was out there with me. There's lots of pictures of her I have there. She always made time to come and stand up for the party and the principles of our party. And I did get to tell her that I loved her before she passed, because she was just the kind of friend you'd want to have. She's just an amazing person. And it's a huge loss for this county, for this planet, really, if I'm being honest, of what she was. And even when she was sick, even when she was really sick and not feeling well, she was still showing up for events. So, I mean, pray for her family. We know she's in a better place. It still hurts because we are going to miss her. In some ways, I feel selfish about that because I am going to miss her a lot. She was just an amazing person. So, thank you for giving me a minute.
There are some of us, and one of us, Bob, who were really so close that it would be, it's almost like picking three more. Unless, Bob, you want to anyway. Do you want to say something or we go away?
It was hard talking about her when she came down with cancer. We all prayed for her. We had many prayer vigils for her. And at times things were looking really good. We thought she was going to come out of it. About a year and a half ago, they told her she only had 6 months to live. And she held on. She had the drive, the strength. Fighting cancer that she fought for our Christian values as well. She was always out there. We traveled all over the United States together. And she not only fought with everything that she had, but she was willing to give financially to a lot of causes, to a lot of people, a lot of things that people that were standing for the truth, for justice, and I'll just say the American way of life, like Superman. She was a superwoman. I was very selfish in wanting her to stay, but the Lord knew better. It was a blessing that she got to spend the last couple of days with her daughter after she graduated from college, and she really got to see that through. So I know that she was holding on that long for that. I know she's in a better place, so I look forward to seeing her.
I went with Kathy the first time she went to MD Anderson because she had nobody else here, and I didn't want her to go alone. And we spent the day together when she wasn't in doctor's offices. Back then, it was 12 years ago. They wouldn't let anybody go in when they talked to the doctor, so I sat in the waiting room. I want you to know this is the toughest woman I have ever had in my life. She ran so many businesses, took care of so many young people, and she didn't have a support system. she was really a very, very special lady, and I think we're all going to miss her very, very much. So, that being said, the fight is still here. The best thing we can do to honor her is to continue the work that she did. If we were half as strong and worked half as hard as she did, this would be a different place, because she was a hard worker. She was there when she spent more time in the parking lot than anybody else that I know of, even probably more than John, because he was inside sometimes. So she was a fighter, and we're gonna miss her. Now, I'm looking around because I was waiting earlier for Claudia to finish eating. Oh, there she is. As you know, how many of y'all know who Claudia Laird is? Judge Laird has been a judge here since 2011, is that correct? In the Second Court of Appeals, County Court of Appeals, all it is, the County Court number 2. Anyway, she probably has seen more stuff that we are glad we haven't seen than anybody. She probably knows more than any of us do about all of that. So we decided this would be the perfect time to have her come and talk to us about the mental health issue. So here's my friend and our judge, Claudia Laird.
Hello, good to see y'all. I am the judge of County Court of Montgomery 2, like Pat said. That is our mental health court. So all the mental health cases for Montgomery County come to my court. And so I see a lot of mental health issues basically every day of every week. So just so there's no confusion, we have a couple of mental health dockets. So if someone's in a mental health docket, that's different than the mental health docket that I do. That's kind of a diversion docket, so if they have someone who's committed a crime and they see they've got a mental health problem, they help get them through the criminal justice system using that docket. My docket is when people are out there and they have become an imminent danger to themselves or to someone else because they're having a mental health crisis. So when I talk about my court, those are the types of cases I'm talking about. They're not necessarily connected to a criminal case or any other kind of case. So mental health, huge topic, y'all. So what I'm going to do, or what I'm going to try to do for you, is just give you like the you know how you go to restaurants and you get the appetizer tray where you get a couple of little pieces of this and that and the other. I'm just going to give you little bits and pieces of this and that and the other, and try and point out things that I think are important to open a discussion and have some better understanding about what the heck is the deal with mental health. And my goal is that when you guys leave here tonight, maybe y'all have thought about some things in a different way. Maybe you've learned a little something that you didn't know before. And hopefully that we can all leave tonight kind of with a little more grace in our hearts and understanding for people who do have mental health problems. Because a lot of times it's hard to understand. A lot of times it's so far removed from something we have personally experienced that you don't know how to relate to it. So hopefully I can help illustrate that in a way that maybe you can't empathize with it, right? But you can sympathize with it. Okay. All right. So if you hit it was yeah. There's a lot of ones.
There's a mouse.
And so the first thing that I want to talk about with regards to mental health is just stigma, right? Y'all would agree with me, I'm certain, I think y'all would agree with me, there's a certain stigma that goes along with mental health, right? When you have high blood pressure, you don't mind walking up into the restaurant and sitting down with someone and say, oh, my blood pressure, it's high, it's been giving me a lot of problems, or oh, I've got a lower back problem, you know, I've had this bulging disc for a long time. What you don't typically do is walk into a restaurant and sit down with someone and say, wow, I've been really battling with this depression, I've just cried all day long and I don't know how to get over it, right? Because those aren't normal conversations, and that comes from the stigma that goes along with mental health. But the most important thing that we can all individually understand is we all have physical problems. If you don't have a physical problem, God bless you. You haven't hit 40 yet, right? That is for sure. And we all have mental health problems as well, right? Now, don't say, oh, what is she saying about me? I'm just saying, if you come and tell me, hey, everything's perfect, I'm great, I'm gonna go, that in itself, I think, is a mental health problem. So we all have stuff. And so physical problems and mental health problems are not different from one another, right? They're both problems. We all have them. We can all do better physically by giving ourselves healthy things. We can all do better mentally by giving ourselves healthy things and getting the treatment that we need. And so that's kind of how I would like to see people starting to think about mental health. And I think as a society, as a country, when we do start thinking about it that way, then we can start taking better steps towards solving the mental health crisis. So, where did this stigma come from? Heck, I don't know, but I have a guess. If back in the day, you said, I have a mental health problem, and you did walk up to the table and say you were depressed and you were crying all day, what happened to you? Right? And so these are real pictures, and not to like dampen the mood, but we are having a mental health talk, and this is very serious business. But this is how we handle mental health from the 1800s all the way through the 1950s. That is a long time, y'all. And look at these pictures. These are institutionalized hospitals, insane asylums, basically, is what they used to call them. And these are real pictures. And our country isn't the only country that did this. Other countries, Western countries do it. Other countries that are not developed still don't have systems like this in place. These are horrifying. So, stigma starts when you're like, oh, I'm having some issues, but you know what? I don't want to go to a place like that. So I think I'm just going to keep that problem to myself. So what do? You don't talk about it, right? And a lot of mental health problems come from being put in solitude. That's why they got rid of a lot of solitary confinements, because we're social creatures, we're group animals. That's why we're here together right now and not all just sitting home like we were during COVID, right? And so the truth of the matter is, we do not, doctors do not, really understand a lot about our amazing brain that God created, and He's the only one that understands it, really. Because it is such a marvelous creation. And so doctors don't understand consciousness. They don't understand a lot of the chemical combinations that go on in your brain. They know that they're there, but they don't know what levels they need to be at for different people. And just understand that people experience things differently. We see colors differently. We experience physical pain differently. Someone might be able to deal with getting a hammer on the hand and go, hey, that's no big deal, and I'm hopping around crying like, oh my gosh, this is the worst thing that's happened to me in months, right? It's the same thing with things that are going on inside your brain. People handle them differently. Some people can handle much more stress than other people can handle. So just remember, when we're dealing with lack of knowledge, that causes complications in how to fix it, or when we try to fix it and we pick the wrong path because we don't know what we're doing. So that's a big problem with mental health, and that is to this day. Even collecting data for this speech, I came across a lot of information points that I wanted regarding cost of mental health treatment and different things. And it's not out there. Collectively, there's so much stuff that it hasn't been studied. And so it's a typical situation, well, for any crisis. How did the situation during the hurricane where New Orleans flooded happen, right? Well, they hadn't taken care of things. They hadn't gotten the right infrastructure and taken care of what's going on. And that's what's happened to us as a society, a world society, our country, our state, Montgomery County, all the way down, everyone's experiencing it. We have not created a good foundation for mental health as a people, and that is why we are now kind of in a crisis. Okay, so I said we were like this basically through the 1950s. The civil rights movement came along in the 1950s, 1960s, and they said, hey, these institutions, this is not the way we should be treating people. Were they right? Yes. But then what did we do? We made the next mistake, right? And it's so typical when you're government, big government, and you're not taking care of things at the local level. Well, we're going to deinstitutionalize, right? So what they did was they defunded, they did a lot of changes with Medicaid and how funding for mental health was going to happen. And those big institutions got defunded, then they couldn't exist. So most of them went away. We still have a handful of state-run hospitals, like when people get declared criminally insane and they're going to lock them away instead of sending them to the penitentiary. We have hospitals for that level. But when we deinstitutionalized, we didn't have something else in place. So it's like closing I-45 in the middle of a hurricane, right? Where are we going? Right? How are we getting out of this mess? And so that's what we did. We closed all of the state-run facilities because they were admittedly horrible. And then it left all the people who had mental health problems to basically descend onto hospitals, right? Our local hospital. And so a lot of those hospitals back in the day had psych wards, but they had limited abilities. They weren't like the mental health institutions. They weren't supposed to be for long term. And now you have everyone coming off I-45 now is all headed for those smaller departments in the hospitals. And so then what happened was by the 1970s, those hospitals were they were done. They were overrun, overworked. The staff couldn't handle it. There wasn't enough funding. It was the next break in a very broken system. And so a lot of the hospitals have now, as of today, closed their psych departments. So in Montgomery County, if you have a mental health emergency and someone takes you to an ER, they will bring you in as a patient. They will stabilize you, right? And if they don't feel that they can let you go because you're still a danger to yourself, they're going to wait until they get a court order to be able to transfer you to a mental health facility. And these are small, dedicated facilities, and we have some of them in Montgomery County, and that's all that they deal with. And that creates a very limited number of beds, right? So we have a lot of things all crisscrossing. What happened to all the people that needed long-term health care that weren't getting it in the hospitals and aren't able to get into these limited number of beds at these facilities for various reasons I'm going to talk about? There are homeless. We see them on the streets. We're seeing more and more now in Montgomery County. And they end up in the prison system. The percentage of people with serious mental illness in prisons back in 1880 was 0.7%. As of today, it is 43%. Now, I'm going to tell you a couple of things. I don't agree with crime. I don't like it. I don't want it in our community. But that's not right, okay? We have to do better with this. The other thing that I will tell you is I am very good friends with the gentleman who used to run the Harris County Jail. Big, very big. He, and many people refer to the Harris County Jail as the largest mental health institution in the state of Texas. The Harris County Jail. Now, trust me when I say, no one's getting better there. And a lot of them will just be released back out to come back around and get more criminal defense on our taxpayer dollars, right? So it is a vicious cycle. And until we start getting better data, better understanding of the brain, and being able to cope with the infrastructure problem we have, it's just going to keep getting worse. So I don't have a lot of good news to give you guys. That's what I just talked about. And so the other side of the infrastructure problem, it's not only where do we send the patients, what do we do with them, it is where do we send the funding. I got Senator Creighton off to the side. The word on the street is they have a little bit of a budget surplus this year. And they were talking about, I was in meetings like this where they were talking about what they were going to use that for, where they were going to focus with it, what we needed. And I kind of pulled them off to the side afterwards and I said, listen, while y'all are thinking about how we're going to spend all that money, please remember mental health because it is overwhelming and it's a problem. And he said, I know it's a problem. It has been year after year after year. And the bigger problem for us is even when we have money to dedicate to it, we don't have an infrastructure to know where to put the money and where it will best meet the needs that we need. So again, a lot of it is not understanding, not having the data that is causing the problems that we're encountering. And so talking about funding, this was one of the things that was very hard for me to get a simple number for y'all. And my question when I started looking for this was, how much does it cost for 1 day of inpatient mental health treatment? On average, you would think this is an average number. I searched and searched and I was really unable to find it. And I actually found a lot of places where it was detailed that we don't really understand or know how much it costs. So of course we can't fund it. We don't even know how much it costs. But what I was able to find was a private healthcare facility that had put up this pricing. So for a teenager, $1,500 a day for 3 to 4 weeks for inpatient mental health treatment, plus professional fees. That is just housing, right? For an adult, it goes up to 17 for 5 to 7 weeks. Who do you know, just right off the top of your head, that can just give up 7 weeks of their lives and not much money, plus professional fees, to be able to get mental health care? So it is very, very expensive. And so my last slide isn't quite working right, which is frustrating. Let's see if I can just delete that. No. And so the other thing I was going to talk about, points behind that slide, is besides it being expensive, a lot of people don't have insurance. A lot of insurance doesn't pay for mental health treatment. And even if you have the money, or you have the insurance, and you have the means, there is not a lot of availability for beds because it's all clogged up. Even outpatient, if you start today and you say, hey, I'm feeling whatever, I want to go talk to a therapist. Unless you have a good route in, like you know somebody, most of the time when you get the little receptionist at the therapist office, you are going to get, we're not taking any patients right now. Or you're going to get, we are taking patients, but it's going to be 30, 60, 90 days. Now, do you think people call therapists 30 and 60 and 90 days before they are in a mental health crisis? No, they do not. They call when they need help right that minute. So these are not viable options, which is why they end up in my court. So on top of all of that, there's our foundation. What a lovely foundation we have. On top of all of that, we're going to just dump social media, which our society has not handled very well, and our brains are not caught up with. And while they're still doing studies on this, and it's gonna be forever before they really have results, they are already finding, not surprisingly, a strong link between heavy social media and an increased risk for depression, anxiety, loneliness, self-harm, and even suicidal thoughts. Then, we're gonna talk on top of that, COVID, right? And of course, the answer you get off the internet when you search how did COVID affect mental health, we don't know, because really, did we ever know anything about COVID? Do we know anything about COVID? It just goes with every other question we ask about COVID. We just don't know. And so I did find different countries around the world were guesstimating at 2 to 3% mental health increase because of COVID. I am not a professional, but I'm going to show you a piece of data from my court, and I'm going to let you be the judge. So just hold for that for a minute. Hopefully the PowerPoint presentation keeps working. So what is a mental health emergency that will get you into county court at law number 2 or a court because of a mental health emergency? It is a life-threatening situation in which someone is in immediate danger to themselves or others. That means an immediate threat to life or substantial injury. I had a case that came through my court, and these are confidential cases, so of course I can't tell you any names or anything like that, and I wouldn't. And you can't even be really, really specific about the details if it's something that might identify someone. But it was a situation where they tried to bring a mental health case and get a mental health warrant for a person who had decided that they were just kind of obsessed with someone and they would rather go sleep on a park bench to be near that person instead of at their home, and their home was going into default on the mortgage, right? The family's very upset, and they come and they try and bring the case on the mental health docket, and I didn't give them a warrant. Now, understand, when I give someone a mental health warrant, this is the government going out in the community, going, you're not functioning properly, and plucking you up against your will and taking you to a mental health care facility, which may include coming back to me later and asking to force medications on you, okay? And I mean exactly what you're thinking. Strap you down to a gurney and put a needle in you with a medication that you do not want. These are very serious constitutional questions. They're not to be taken lightly. And so that person had some friends in the community, and I got approached by some people like, oh my gosh, that lady, you just left her. I'm like, yeah, she wasn't in immediate danger to herself or someone else. Was she making terrible decisions? Yes. Was she going to immediately die from them? No. Was someone else going to immediately die from them? No. So that's the level we're looking for. Now, I think we could have done some other things for her, like gotten a guardianship or a trust over her house so she didn't lose it, or we could kind of get those funds together. But a mental health case has to meet a very high burden. And so I think the next slide, oh no, this is such a good slide, and they're all not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Okay, so last week I knew I was going to do this presentation. And so I decided I wanted you guys to see what I see firsthand. So these little clips are actually from cases that are filed. They're not identifying any people, and trust me, they're not really unique. But it gives you a taste of what we see actually coming through. So let's see. The first one I'm looking at here is, he states he tried to cut himself twice in an attempt to commit suicide. Thoughts of cutting wrists. He's depressed, manic with depressive disorder, and suicidal thoughts. Now let me tell you, you could be thinking this person just wants attention, right? You could be thinking a lot of different things about this person. But here's what my experience is. People who are saying they want to commit suicide, people who want to commit suicide, are not doing it because they don't want to live anymore. That's not why. They're not doing it for attention. They don't want to leave their family and their kids behind. That is not what is causing it. What is causing it is whatever is going on with them, whatever diagnosis they have, is causing them so much pain and discomfort every minute of every day. And they really just need it to stop. That's what they need. They need the pain to stop. It would be no different than if you're dying from cancer, you're going to chemo, it hurts, you're nauseated every day. And what is the human reaction? You just don't want that anymore. And so it's totally normal for a person to say, you know what, I don't want any more cancer treatment, I'm going to lay down, I'm at peace with it, and I'm ready to go. When people start thinking that way because of the mental health problems they're having, well, we can't see that, right? And then there's something wrong with them. But what they're trying to do is the same thing that a cancer patient is doing when they say, I don't want to live anymore. They are just trying to make the pain stop. They're suffering terribly. The one above that, I needed the kids, so I have to block out a couple of little letters. But this one is a man who thought there was someone under his bed. He grabbed a bat and he said, I'm going to blink and kill you. He also threatened another friend, pointing his finger on her forehead, saying, stay out from under my bed, I'm going to kill you. Was extremely combative and aggressive, threatening others around him with knives and bats. Now I'm going to tell you, you're not going to believe this. I had another one today with a different human being threatening to kill his roommates because he knew that there was someone under his bed. And I sent it back to my clerk and I said, I signed this last week. This is the same person. And it wasn't. She double checked for me. So we see, even down to the specifics, the repeated ideas. And I want you to understand, when that person says there's someone in my bed, this person's not walking around the house going, oh, I think I heard something under the bed. He's not going, oh, there's a monster under my bed. He has looked under his bed and he sees someone who is not there. He sees someone. He is hallucinating, right? It's a condition for people who have schizophrenia, psychosis, and it is very real. It is terrifying. So imagine you having a nightmare, how relieved you are when you wake up and you take that breath and you go, oh, it's not real. And then it takes a minute, right, to come down off of it if it's a really bad nightmare. These people are stuck in the reality of that nightmare and they cannot get out. And if you're schizophrenic, we call them frequent flyers because we give them medication to get them out of the nightmare. Schizophrenics are quite often paranoid. They don't trust, right? They've got all these things. They have voices. They have hallucinations, right? No wonder they're paranoid. You're trying to reason with them. They don't know if you're real, if that's real, what's real. So then they get paranoid. Now they're starting to feel better, but what are they doing? They're taking this medicine that they never trusted to begin with, and they're feeling better. So what don't they need anymore? The medicine, right? And they stop taking the medicine, and then they decompensate, and they are frequent flyers. They come back through over and over and over again. And so the only thing that they've been able to come up with is they have some long-acting injectables that they know they can pop them with that before they leave them out. But they also know it's only a matter of time. They're going to be coming right back in. It's very sad. Whereas if we had inpatient psychiatric facilities like the institutions we used to have, but better run with care and compassion and a brain as to what these people are going through, they wouldn't just be pushed back out on the street to encounter this. The one at the top says the patient attempted suicide by taking caffeine pills. The patient presents with multiple symptoms of depression and currently denies any future-oriented thoughts. Now, I want you to understand what that means, future-oriented thoughts. That doesn't, you might think that means they're not thinking about committing suicide in the future. That's not what that means. They're not thinking about the future. They're not thinking about what they have to do when Claudia gets done talking to my kids. They're not thinking about tomorrow morning and getting their kids to school. They're not thinking about their summer trip. Because guess what? They're not planning to be around for any of that. They're not thinking about the future because it's not going to happen for them because they're going to commit suicide. And I want to tell you about these, so I'm just going to see if I can just cut these out as we go along. Maybe. Oh, it's
Maybe
a
roll
PDF.
up and down on the phone with it.
No. So anyway, I'm not going to be able to show you the rest of them because it's not coming up as an actual PowerPoint, it's a PDF. But I will tell you, when I decided that I was going to put these in the presentation for today, I thought it about 10 o'clock Friday morning while I was doing my other dockets in the courtroom, and these things rolled in kind of on our software, and so I would read through them, there's several pages, and then I decided if I'm going to sign or not. I have 10 of these pictures, and it took maybe 1 to 2 hours for me to get 10 verified mental health problems, and that is just how quick they come in. Every day, all day, and it's relentless. Huh? Yes, every person who comes in gets a court-appointed attorney ad litem, which is a cost for us, but it's something that we have to do because, you know, back in the day, people would institutionalize a loved one just to get a hand up in a divorce case or some, get their estate or something like that. And you know what it is? I think these stats are so important. If y'all will indulge me, I have a jump drive with my PowerPoint. I'm just gonna grab it out of my purse and try and get it loaded up because these are the stats, and I know you guys are all about the numbers, so I really wanted to show them. Hang on 1 second.
Somebody tell a joke.
And we will, let's hold off on the questions until she gets through, and then we'll bring our mic around so that we can hear the question as well as the answer.
Yeah, you have to take the mouse off.
Okay, can I just pull it
Yeah,
out?
you can. We got a little shortage.
Technology is our friend. Sometimes.
Sometimes, we'll see. Oh, I'm sorry.
The jokes review this.
Do you PowerPoint on this machine?
No, it's try to open it, it'll go to open office top. We can use PDFs. Every once in a while. It records them. Not there.
No, it's okay.
Wing it.
Okay, it's not there. But I remember what it said. So imagine it. Sicily, 1949. Any Gold War fans? No. Okay. Don't follow me down the trail. Okay, so this chart was supposed to have from 2014 all the way across to 2023. And on the vertical axis, it was going to have the number of mental health cases filed. Okay, so 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, they teetered for a year, a year's worth of filing between That's nothing. That's a cakewalk, we got it. Right? Right, Justice Wright? That's not a lot. Okay, but then in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, it kind of every 2 years started doubling, right? It went like from that 250 to 500, from that 350 to 600, and so it started kind of peaking up, right? Then we had to start doing new contracts for more mental health ad items. It cost us more money, more cases, yada, yada, yada. And then, so why was that? So we can move on to our next slide. Oh my gosh, this is so evil. They're all disappearing as I click go through.
It's magic.
Okay, this is why we have more mental health cases, specifically in Montgomery County. What is that? It's a hospital. Are hospitals bad? We thought these were good. It's bad to be in them. These are good, right? It's good to have hospitals in our communities. These are wonderful, beautiful hospitals, and you'll notice that after 99 came through, we have our own little medical center, right? On 45 at about 242. And then we have, I don't know if you know this, Kingwood. The Kingwood Hospital is part of Montgomery County. And then that's the Conroe Regional. We've had that one for a while. Now, why is more hospitals causing a rise in mental health cases? Because the law says when a police officer picks someone up on a mental health issue, and that's who picks you up if you have a mental health issue, the law is that they bring you to the first available mental health facility. So guess what? All these rural areas outside Montgomery County that used to drive through to Houston, we have beds, a lot of them, and we're building more. So we started getting a lot more patients from other areas of the state. To make matters worse, that's a new one. Have y'all seen that one? This is like planned for the Woodlands. I haven't even seen that. This is just in drawing stages. But I mean, it's out there on the internet. They've drawn it. So some corporation thinks that this is going to be another medical center they're going to put in the Woodlands, which is very interesting. But then these guys, always these guys. So what are these guys doing to us?
Jumping them here.
Amen. They're dumping them here. And why are they dumping them here? Because when you put someone, we talked about this earlier, you send them to an ER, the ER stabilizes them. If they still think they're a danger, they're going to send them to a psych facility, one of the smaller facilities. Guess who has to transport them? The mental health authority, which is our constables, right? It takes 2 to 4 constables per transport, okay? So the constables pick them up in Harris County. They don't want to have to come back and transport them later if they leave them in Harris County. So they just bring them right across the Montgomery County line into Montgomery County, and they put them in one of our hospitals. And the hospital has to take them. You know, they're being presented with a medical problem. So I think the only way we get through that is a legislative fix. So these are the things that are running numbers up. Now, and just so y'all know, this was the furthest away that I had a mental health case from in my court. I was like, "You're from where?" And she told me again, the Valley. And I said, "Were you visiting here? And then this happened?" "No." I said, "You're telling me this all happened in your hometown, and the first hospital they could get you to was in Montgomery County, Texas?" "Yes, ma'am, that's exactly what happened." So when I say they are coming in from all around, I really mean all around, and I'm still dumbfounded by that. Before I move on to current legislation, imagine again the charts. And I said that all the things that I had seen on the internet said maybe 2 or 3% increased growth. And the last number for 2020, if I'm remembering it right, was around 990 something. The line between 2020 and 2021, still not too steep. At 2021, the line does this and bumps up to 2,000 cases for the year. And estimated for 2023, based on the first 4 months, over 4,000. So 2021, we went from having 1,000 or so cases to 2,000 and then 4,000. Now tell me COVID did not have an effect on mental health, because I don't know anything else in our county that would account for that drastic jump. And it makes sense. If mental health problems are brought on by being isolated, being stressed, having lost a job, having a bad thing happen in your life, COVID had all of the elements to take someone who has a minor psychological problem and make it a crisis, or someone who doesn't have a psychological problem and make one for them. I can tell you specifically, my daughter has ADHD, means basically her brain doesn't really communicate with the executive region, right? And so she is a general pain in the tush to have to deal with. She comes up with bad ideas and she executes them with glee and happiness just to irritate her parents, which makes her more happy. Well, she is on ADHD medication for that, just for when she's in school, because it helps her grades tremendously. She's able to focus, she's able to learn. This is a good thing. Very hard decision for us to put our child on medication because we did not want to do that. But it was recommended, we tried it, and we saw wonderful results for her, and so we stayed the course. During COVID, a lot more adults became diagnosed with ADHD and those type of problems. There were so many more diagnoses that they used up all the adult ADHD medicine on the market, which is Adderall. It's gone. You can't get it. Supply is gone. So what did the adults do then when that was gone? They started moving down into the other brands of medications that you normally use for your kids in school. So every brand of medication to be able to use for ADHD right now, it's impossible to get. It's months, right? And so these kids that have this are going to school, and it's because of COVID. And if you want to know how much that medication is, because your insurance won't pay for it, the brand name, if there's a generic, right? And so there's plenty of generics. If you want to even get a generic, just pay, because I found someone who had it, but they weren't on my insurance plan. I said, fine, I'll pay you cash. How much? $500 for a 30-day supply. $500 for a 30-day supply. So your kid can learn. So COVID did have an effect. And the crisis is definitely real, and we're definitely feeling it in a real way. Current legislation, I'm so happy Judge Claudia's here. Because I'm going to tell you, I'm looking at this legislation that has made its way through the House, and it's headed to the Senate. It's coming from a very good legislator. I'm going to see him in a couple of months, and I'm going to ask him, please explain this to me. But there's two parts of this legislation for mental health that cause me a little bit of distress. The first part is it used to say a court may allow a physician to present an application for a warrant, right? So who can ask for a warrant? Police officers ask for warrants in criminal cases. Our police officers all have to go through the district attorney's office to make sure someone has just given it a legal look through, that everything's in good order, before they can bring it to a judge. Everybody's on the same page with that, right, in Montgomery County. These physicians currently have to bring it to our county attorney's office, because that's the civil side, right? The county attorney's office does the same thing. They go through the warrant, they make sure it's valid, they make sure it's drawn up right, and then they present it to the court. This makes it look like a court must allow a physician to present an application for a warrant by electronic means. It almost looks like the physician will be able to email directly to the judge. Now, I just want you to imagine one judge getting all the emails from all these physicians in all these different places without the benefit of the county attorney's office and staff going through it and giving it the once over to make sure it's legitimate. It's going to be impossible. To make matters worse, the second piece that is in there, it says that a court shall accept an OPC, which is a mental health application, filed at any time that the judge or magistrate is on duty, regardless of whether the application is filed after 5 p.m. on a weekday, on a Saturday, Sunday, or on a state or national holiday. So, right now, what happens, and this is all over the state, this isn't just Montgomery County, every place but Harris County, because they are the third largest city in the country. They're different, right? Really different than us. But for the rest of us, what happens is come Friday, we tell these hospitals, you need to have your paperwork to us by such and such time, right? Because let me tell you what the hospitals do, and it's not their fault. You're a nurse, you're a person dealing with people. Do you want to stop what you're doing to fill out a whole bunch of court paperwork? No. So what they do is they push it to the very last seconds. And then what we were having was every Friday at 5 o'clock before the buildings would close, we would have 15 mental health applications hit our clerk's office. Then the clerk has to go through the process of filing them, making sure they're appropriately filed, and then they push them to the court. So what was happening was every Friday, the clerk's office was having to all stay late, and the county attorney's office was having to all stay late, and county court too was having to all stay late because the hospitals are waiting to the last minute to push these applications. So we, as well as every other place in the state except for Harris County, set a deadline. If you want us to get to this before the end of the day Friday, I think ours is 3 o'clock. It was 4:30, but it ended up, as we were getting so many of them, we needed more time, so we pushed it back to 3. This seems to make it so that they can file it 24/7. And it makes it look, there's a section of the law that allows a judge to file something. If you hand a judge a document that you want filed with the court, there's a law that says the judge can take the filing, okay? Now these applications have filing fees, you need to add items, all sorts of things have to happen. This almost makes it look like it can be filed with the judge by bypassing the clerk, and if they have my email address and can get it to me 24/7, holidays, middle of the night. This is 24-hour intake at the court level. Now, here's the sad thing. It isn't that I don't care that these people haven't gotten their applications filed, but there are 2 laws already in place that address what happens when courts aren't open. And even when courts are open, if a hospital wants to detain someone, wants to keep someone, an officer picks someone up, or even to transfer someone, the law is that if a police officer sees someone who appears to be in imminent danger to themselves or others, they don't need a warrant. They can pick them up in their own police officer authority and take them to a mental health facility. So what they're doing is they're using the hospitals are using the courts as a backstop, right? Because their liability department is like, well, if we have an order signed by a judge, we have to follow that. But if we don't, and we're just going on what a police officer tells us, someone might come in and be able to sue us. So for several months in Montgomery County, we've had these bigger hospitals calling and trying to basically force us to turn into this 24-hour intake, which is going to be terribly costly for the county. And I've talked to the county judge's office about it, and we've tried to determine, is this really a crisis? Do we need to address it? Or is this just the hospitals making the taxpayer basically subsidize their business operations. And we decided it was the latter. And no sooner did we decide this than I see that they're going to the legislature. The other thing about transferring patients, there is a law that says you can transfer a patient from one medical facility to another medical facility on the signature of the hospital administrator, right? They can do it. They don't need a judge's order to do this. But they're using us as the backstop for their liability in their legal department. So that is kind of frustrating. I'm telling you now, if that comes through and it comes through in that serious manner, you're gonna see one or two new judges just for mental health for 24/7 intake, because we have 24/7 magistrates for criminal right now, but they're loaded up with criminal. They can't do anything. How am I doing? Okay. So I have some more pictures, and I wanted to talk to you about the types of disorders, so you could really, because this is really about the people, the types of disorders I see a lot of. This one was the last one, which is bipolar. Bipolar people cycle up and down, really high, really low. They hit a terrible peak of depression, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. And then when they're finished with that cycle, they bump up to mania, is what we call it. Now, I've never had mania. I don't know what mania is about, but I've looked and talked to people who have had mania. And so the best thing that I can do that someone illustrated is when she's having a manic moment. It's like when I walk in this room and I see a whole bunch of different friends that I know, and I see toys, and I see kids, and I see a salad, and I see all these things, right? You all saw all these things when you walked in too, right? You made note of them, you sat down, and then when you went to talk to the people at your table, you talked about the one thing that was most important to you. Someone who is experiencing a manic state, all those things, all the things that have happened to them that are in their mind during that day, they're all swirling like a whirlpool. And they're trying to reach in to grab something to focus on. But as soon as they grab that thing and get it out of their mouth, the next thing bumps it out of their head, right? So they're going to be like, oh my gosh, it's been so long since I thought, oh my gosh, and a lot of times they'll be very happy for no particular reason. They might be laughing when nothing's really funny. Oh, Mr. Sampson, so nice to see you. Oh, that sounds like so great. I wanted to get one of those, but I didn't. Oh my God, there's Robin. Oh my God, the party was so great the other day. You know what? I'm really upset with the weather, and I'm so worried about that. And that is what they do, right? And when they're not doing that, they want to kill themselves. So imagine living your life with no in between, and you're just waiting for the next, right? Another thing that I see is people who have depression. Now, I'm going to tell you, and I just had the same conversation with someone who came in, and the conversation goes like this. Well, you know, yeah, I feel bad sometimes, and you just don't let things get you down. Pick yourself up by the bootstraps, right? We all have hard times, things are sad, right? True, all true. And so if you're one of those people, count yourself lucky, right? Because what I can tell you is if you haven't been through it, you're not going to understand it, okay? I have been through a bout of depression. I can tell you from personal experience what it feels like. It was, thank God, many years ago. This PowerPoint presentation is in black and white. It's in grayscale, other than these pictures, but the first one. That is how I visualize everything. There was no color. I physically did not see it. The weight that was on me made it hard to breathe. It made it hard to do anything. And when I say do anything, I don't mean like have a child. I mean like walk down the hall. I had to think and force myself to put one foot in front of the other. When I went to take a bath, I had to think about picking up the soap, lathering it up, and it was so hard. just to wash my face. And so you'll see people with depression a lot of times are unkept. They stay in bed. You would never ask somebody who had the flu, hey, get up on the bed and pull yourself up by those bootstraps. Go take a shower for God's sakes, right? But that's what someone with depression is dealing with. And time moves at a pace that is minute to minute to minute. And I'm going to tell you, during that time frame, I didn't cry every day of my life. I wept. I can remember the first day in over a year that by 3 o'clock I was like, oh my God, I haven't cried today. And then it became a goal. I go, oh my gosh, like this is the break, right? If I can make it to the end of the day and just not cry, it means that maybe one day I'll be able to do 2 days without crying, okay? And so eventually I did therapy, I did all the things. Eventually, I had a friend who was going through a mental health school to get a master's, and she said, honey, I think you need to get on some medication. I think it will help bring you the last step. And I know that a lot of people are like, psychiatric medications, right? But let me just tell you, if someone needs a psychiatric medication, let them have it. Don't think anything bad about them, because just like if I saw Lindsay and she had a boulder sitting on top of her, crushing her to death, we would all jump up and move a boulder and save her, right? That's what that medication is doing for someone who needs it. It is pulling the boulder off. And I was terrified. There was the stigma. I'm an elected official. I can't even believe I'm saying this out loud right now. But if I want us to start thinking about this in a normal way, someone's got to be brave and say, heck yeah, been there, done that, and it helped. And so I'm telling you, I didn't want to do it. I did on the advice of someone who cared for me and loved me and knew more about stuff than I did. And it helped me get myself back. It took away the grave, and I was worried how it would make me feel. It made me feel like Claudia again, right? That's all it did. And so I was very thankful about that. Then you have, the other thing that I see a lot of is anxiety. You can all understand anxiety. You've all been afraid. Tell me someone, please raise your hand, if you've never been afraid in your whole life of anything, right? It's just when the fear becomes debilitating, right? So you have a phobia of spiders. That doesn't make, the spider's not going to do anything to you, right? We all know that logically, but the little guy that lives in your brain that is afraid of the spider, he's not listening to the logical person who's got spiders in after him. People who are afraid to fly, I used to be deathly afraid to fly. And I remember Bobby, who used to love to tell his pilots, no, go ahead, do some loops with Claudia on the plane, it'll be fine. Bobby was like, Claudia, you are more safe right now than you are when you were standing on the ground. And I know that. I'm a smart girl, I know about the air pressure and all that stuff, I know that. But the person who is running the ship, when I get on the plane, doesn't care about all that. They just don't want to be on that plane, right? And so I ended up taking enough flights. I did a flight to Africa. It was like 1 billion hours. And then sooner or later, my brain just went, well, it hasn't crashed so far, so I guess we're okay. So I can fly again without all that craziness. But I'm still not, I would still rather not be on the plane. I just really love to travel, so we still go. So that's anxiety. That's a type of anxiety disorder. When it becomes bad is when you have that anxiety about whatever it is so badly, it's making you not be able to function. That's when it becomes the point you need to treat it. The last one I see a lot of, and it's so sad, is schizophrenia. Now you probably know someone who's got depression, who's got, maybe know someone who's bipolar, you probably know someone who's got anxiety disorder. You probably don't know someone who's schizophrenic. This is less seen in regular society, but I see it a lot on my mental health docket. And that's the person that I was talking about that's looking under the bed, and he can see the person there, and it's very real to him, and he can hear voices, and it's very real to him. And so we see a lot of those, and amazingly enough, they don't know what causes it, of course, and it doesn't onset until you're in your 20s. So you're fine. One of my sweet schizophrenic ladies that I used to deal with, her name was Nicole. She had a master's. Every time I saw her, she was well put together. She was lovely. And I had about a 20-minute conversation with her the first time I ever talked to her. And I'd already seen all the records, so I knew. And she was so smart. And I'm like, what is going on here? Have they brought me the wrong patient? I mean, this person is fine. And then she was in for guardianship, and her dad was a physician. And she did not want her dad to be her guardian, which I thought, that's interesting. Maybe she had a fight with her dad. And I'm like, well, Nicole, why don't you want your dad to be your guardian? And she very matter-of-factly told me the type of her blood. And then she said it's very rare. And then she knows that her dad is trying to get her organs to sell them on the black market because you can make a lot of money because she's got a rare blood type. And that was when I went, oh, there it is. There it is. There it is, right? And she was so paranoid, she wouldn't leave her food in her apartment. She carried it with her everywhere she went, poor thing. One of her apartments, she wouldn't go through the gates. And so she took all of her furniture out and climbed up on top of it to climb over the fence. And so they took all her furniture away from her dad did, except for a mattress. And that smart little girl, she went and got duct tape. And she formed herself a ladder to climb over. But these are the extreme lengths that people with schizophrenia will go through because of their paranoia and because their brain is not functioning like ours is. And so, okay, I don't ever recommend movies as part of my talk, but I think if you want to understand and get the feeling of some of these things, there's some really good movies out there. Now, here's my disclaimer. Some of these movies I've seen, and it's been eons ago, so if there's some politically bad something in there, I don't remember it. Or if there's, adults, material, so I'm not making any representations as to that. I'm just saying, as far as seeing a representation of what it feels like to have a certain mental health problem, these are very good movies to watch. I've seen both of these. Out of all the movies that I am going to recommend to you, The Soloist is one that a lot of people don't know about. And when I watched it, I was just like, wow, that is it. They have hit the nail on the head. They have illustrated by an individual story the mental health crisis in this country. And Jamie Foxx, and both of these movies are based on true stories. And Jamie Foxx is in the role, I'm getting chills. He has schizophrenia, and he is a magnificent cello player, concert quality. But he can't even go inside the apartment and live because his schizophrenia won't allow it. And so it's just such an interesting insight and look into it. The same thing, the man in A Beautiful Mind was a Nobel laureate. And he dealt with schizophrenia. And it's about things and challenges that he went through in his life. So those are two good movies on schizophrenia. If you want to just cry a lot, these are not movies that I would say, like, oh yeah, get a glass of wine and watch these. These two movies, I watched them both. I didn't really know what they were about when I watched them. The movie, The Hours, that thing that I was talking about minute to minute to minute when you have depression, I saw this movie before I actually went through it. And looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, that did give you that feeling of just how slowly and hard time it is. And then Kate has Jennifer Aniston, and she's suffering through the loss of a loved one. And all the emotions and getting through that and the depression that it caused. So I've seen both of those movies, both excellent movies, and really will illustrate depression, anxiety disorder. There's a lot of different anxiety disorders. The King's Speech, true story about the king that had a speech impediment, and he's going to try and be king and do his speeches. And it's the anxiety that comes with trying to overcome that to be able to give a speech. The other one is probably one of my favorite little movies I've ever watched. It's called Lars and the Real Girl. And it's a little lighthearted. It is not a true story, but Lars has anxiety disorder where he's afraid to be touched or to have a girlfriend, but he is very lonely and he wants to have a girlfriend. And so he orders a life-size mannequin, and that is his girlfriend. And he lives in a very small community, and it shows like everyone's reactions to it. And he's like, oh, meet my girlfriend, Michelle. And they're like, oh, nice to meet you, Michelle. And so it just shows, and then his brother's like, she's not real, stop it. And it shows him going through therapy. But it's just a real neat little thing where this little town ends up supporting the idea that the mannequin is real. Just to get him through this, I think they had a party for her. Eventually, when he didn't need her anymore, she died. They had a funeral for her. It was the craziest thing. But it was just such an interesting illustration of how you can help someone who's going with something by just not trying to argue with them and tell them, no, it's not real. If it's not hurting anybody, let them go with it. And then the last one, now neither one of these movies I saw, so I went off a recommendation from a friend who had seen them both. This is on bipolar, Touched with Fire, and Silver Linings has someone who has OCD and someone who has bipolar. So now I'm interested in watching both of those movies. So I'm going to end where I started. What can you do? And that is, what must happen if we as a society, as a community, are going to start tackling the mental health problem individually? Like, we can't do all the infrastructure thing. That's for legislators and politicians and doctors. But what we can do individually is just understand mental health problems, no different than physical problems. Everybody's got them to some degree. Everyone needs help at some point to some degree. Just be there and kind of don't judge and just listen. If that's all you have to do, just listen. But I guess that's the message for the night. So if anyone has questions, I'm not a doctor. Please don't.
Great job.
Great job. Great job. Please wait till Sarah brings you the mic.
Oh, I thought Sarah was going to ask me a question. I was like, oh,
She is. Go ahead.
The hardest question
Come on.
of the night.
Come on, Sarah. Yeah, what?
She's instructed not to let it go.
Right, so a couple things. I'm a physician in Montgomery County, so I understand your pain. And a lot of times we get people in the hospital who are trying to get mental health care facilities to transfer. Nobody wants to take them. So let me just, some of you know my thing about this, but let me just read you a recent article. And bear with me, because it has a point. So the 20 largest nonprofit hospitals in the country continue to make massive profits while their cumulative net assets went from $206 billion in 2018 to $324.3 billion in 2021. So my point is, in one of the biggest nonprofit facilities for psychiatric care is the Memorial Harm System. They pay no taxes. They don't accept anybody. I have called for transfer to the Memorial Health Care System. The first thing they do is ask for a case sheet. They do a wallet biopsy. If they don't have insurance, they have insurance they don't like, they don't take them. So if you want to start somewhere, start with that.
And that's who had the lawyers calling me, trying to get us to go 24/7. So you've nailed the part.
And they're not the only offender, and we'll see if I can get down to the Methodist system, which is my favorite. And Houston Methodist, 2018, net assets $5 billion, 2021. Anybody want to guess how much money they made in 2021?
More than I did.
$10 billion. They doubled their assets because of COVID. None of the nonprofit institutions in the United States, only 2 have returned the COVID money that was given to the federal government, and they only returned partially, everybody else just kept it. Now, full disclosure, most of y'all know me, know I work for HCA. I'm not speaking for HCA. HCA, which is a for-profit facility, gave back $6 billion.
Good for y'all.
So, to say that there is a shortage of facilities to take care of those people is inaccurate. There's a shortage of facilities that are willing to take care of those people. It's the problem.
Well stated. My mom worked for HCA for 15 years as a CNO, so I'm familiar with them. Thank you for that. Yes, sir.
I have a question. Do you have statistics by, for lack of a better term, generation? Like say, you know, people between, I'm talking about as far as the mental health issues, you know, 60 and 70%, 50 to 60%, you know, certain percentages, because my perception, particularly after I hear something that's going on at college, is that each generation we are having weaker-minded people being raised in society.
So I don't have those statistics. That's a really good question. I would have loved to have those. I will tell you one piece of insight I can tell you is when I do see people on my mental health docket, they are, I've seen everybody, all ages, all sexual orientations, all religious affiliations, all work backgrounds. I've seen homeless people, I've seen judges. Not me, yeah. But I have seen judges on my mental health docket. I've seen lawyers. I've seen a life coach. These are the people you go to when you're looking for direction. So, now I would say different things bring them there. You know, what they're facing is different. A lot of times I'll see older people that are getting divorced, which is something we've never seen before. People that have been married 30, 40 years and getting divorced. And one spouse is like, what do you even mean? We can't, this is not, you know, they can't even imagine it because it just doesn't happen for y'all's generation, right? But for a select few it is. And a lot of times it's having a terrible impact on the partner that does not want to get divorced. So yeah, I think we're facing different challenges in different generations. But I don't have the statistics.
So what's in our face every single day is the homelessness. And I would have to say there are quite a few out there that it may not be mental health. It's a fact that they've lost their jobs and because of, for whatever reasons, or their homes. But there is the vast majority of them, there may be no help for them. And so you can't just open up these buildings and put beds in them and hope that they don't want it. They just as soon stay there on the streets. So what kind of answers do you have for that kind of mental health, where they're becoming such a huge burden on society because they don't want the help, but the cities or the counties or states don't have the resources to handle that kind of large amount of people.
Well, and a lot of them, you're right, won't go in. And that, the movie The Soloist actually addresses that. You know, this man comes along and sees the amazing talent that this human being has. And he's like, oh, you know, he thinks like we do, right? Oh, well, we need to get him services and guardianship and in an apartment. And he couldn't stay in an apartment. The paranoia wouldn't allow him to. And then the funny thing is watching the guy who's inserted himself in this situation go to the social services agency, you know, with the ones who were inundated with it, furious, like, why, and look, and how do you see? And he needs this, and he needs that, and the social services guy said, let me ask you a question. Have you asked him if he wants this? Does he want the apartment, or do you want him in the apartment? So what you're saying is valid, totally valid, and it's out there, and it's part of it. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know how to fix it. But I do agree with you that there are a lot of people out there that, because of their disorder, cannot or unable to stay in a normal living situation and want to be homeless. And the schizophrenic young lady that I talked about that would carry her food around, she was homeless 90% of the time. And it made us so sad because she would be pregnant a lot as well. So we watch for her on the streets. I take her to lunch sometimes when I saw her. But what I found in my experience with her was I wanted to fix it. I wanted to snatch her up and put her in an apartment and take care of her. And then I realized that the closer you got to her, the more paranoid she was of you. So the way you had to handle her was when she wanted something, she would come find us because she knew we were a source. And so as hard as that pill was to swallow, I was just like, okay, the only way I can help this person is on her terms. And that's all I can do is be there for her when she reaches out to me. And sometimes that is all we can do, is let it be on their terms, meet them where they're comfortable, and, take them clothes, take them shoes, take them food, all those things. But sometimes it's just not as easy, even if you do have a facility or a place or a bed, they're not going.
Judge, where does, in the cases you're seeing, PTSD come in and the various issues that come with PTSD? And does that look like it's on the rise? And then the other side of my question is, where does dementia fit in? Dementia is cruel.
Yeah.
And yet it's a form of mental illness.
Right, so two completely separate things. The PTSD, I see more in the criminal aspect where we have a soldier, he's come back, the pressure and the situation has manifested, or he is self-medicating, so he picks up a DWI, right? We get that a lot. We also get where they're getting a lot of anxiety or something, they kind of freak out and pull a gun because that's what you do when you're in the military and everything's on you. They're not doing it because they're trying to hurt anybody. They're doing it because they have been programmed and they have the PTSD. So we see a lot of that in the Veterans Court, which is a program that I actually brought to Montgomery County, and Judge Hamilton does a wonderful job of that. So we see a lot there. I do occasionally see some gentlemen with PTSD that come through my court on the mental health docket. And, I try, and they're always the ones, police officers, firefighters, all those first responder military guys, right, and ladies. Like, they wanna tough it out, right? They're like, no, I just need to get back to work, or I need to be tougher. And so that's the heartbreaking part of it, is they don't need to be tougher. They need to get the help that they need. And they've been tough enough for all of us. But right now it needs to be about them and them getting some help. So we do get them in, and I just try and be really gentle and suggest, like, okay, but you know what? You need to take care of yourself. You've got a wife and you've got some kids, and they need you. They need you to go get this counseling and this therapy. I know you think you don't need it, and you might not need it, but they need you to do this. So do it for them. And so that's kind of how I try and couch it when I'm talking to them. But they definitely like Veterans Treatment Court, because what veterans don't like is sitting in a mental health group session, right? And there's kids that are suffering from depression because they're stressed about college, and there's other people, and no one has the background of what caused their problems. No one can even understand it unless you're another military guy that's been deployed. And so they really are more open to seeking help with other military guys than they are just going into a mixed group session with kind of everybody. And so I found that's important to it. Because they're like, you have no idea what I've been through. You have no idea what I have seen. Where their comrades, do, and they respect it and respect each other for it. So they feel better having that therapy in that session. So I think that keeping them together for the therapies is a good thing. All right.
So there have been numerous attempts and almost 100% success rate in normalizing mental disorders such as gender dysphoria. And we have an entire generation that is being abused in school districts where they're being taught that if you believe you're a girl, but you're really a biological male, then you're really a girl, and we are giving credence as a culture to a mental disorder. On the flip side of that, you have certain people in government that want to implement red flag laws, right? Which there's no due process for that. So on one hand, we claim to care about mental disorders, and on the other hand, we normalize them. Just as a judge, what are your thoughts on the two sides of that coin? And do you believe that we have the infrastructure prepared for the type of damage or the reaction of the war on both sides of that coin?
No. That's the easiest answer to that. But, it's politics. It's just like everything else. We were at Mother's Day, and we were talking about the border, and my mom was like, it makes sure that they can get together and fix this. And I'm like, of course they can. Of course they can fix it. Of course they can fix it. They don't want to fix it. It's so good to keep us all wound up and against each other, right? And so anything that's useful for people who have motives to bring power to themselves, bring money to themselves, they're going to fan the flames as much as they can. I used to laugh, honestly, when the bathroom thing came into being an issue, and I thought, with as many times as I've been in the bathroom myself, right? We're women. We know how to deal with things in the bathroom. Hey, big government, we don't need you in the potty with us, okay? Really? Do you need to be right there too? And I thought about, I think there was maybe 2 times in my life where someone who was a male but was sexually oriented, towards being homosexual, came in the bathroom and I don't care, right? They weren't ran out of the bathroom. The women were just like, okay, he's putting his makeup on, whatever, some blood things. My problem is when you do put that law out there, and then you're telling someone you have to let this happen, then you open the door for people who do have nefarious reasons for going in there, because now you have forced a situation where people are unable to speak up, speak out. You're seeing it in women's athletics now, and it's terrible. And I don't even see feminists who call themselves feminists and stand by silently and allow this to happen, but there it is. So, but it's politics, and it's ugly, and it's terrible, and it's just ugly. And I think if you get down to the base level, person to person, human to human, we all still have more in common than we do separate. And I think that if a person who believed differently than the people in this room came in this room and sat down and wanted to talk about those beliefs, I believe that everyone in this room would love to talk about those beliefs and would have that conversation. But as long as that fan is being flamed by the media and all those sources, of course we're not going to be able to talk because everyone's so just inundated with it. And I do think that's causing a lot of mental health. I'll tell you, I saw a young man on the mental health docket during the whole Black Lives Matter thing, right? He was a kid. He was maybe 19. He's a baby. And he was an African-American young man, had never even been in contact with the police, never had any problems with the police. But he had sat and watched that and was terrified. And then, of course, you know, he's going to get pulled over for like speeding. And that police officer turned on his lights, that kid freaked out. He ended up running his car into a tree. I mean, he's lucky to be alive. If that kid had killed himself, it would be the Black Lives Matter movement that killed that young man, which is so sad. And then, so I tried to talk to him a little bit. I'm not a black man. I don't know what they go through. I can't speak to that. I'm not even going to try. But what I did try and point out to him is, those officers, when you ran from them, you committed a felony. They could have just scooped you up right at that moment and taken you to the jail, and then taken you to the pen if they got a verdict. But what they chose to do for you was see that you were suffering from this fear, and they brought you to a mental health facility to get you help. So whenever you're coming in contact with officers in the future, just remember there have at least been 2 in your lives that really did you a good thing. And then I told him, and sometimes it's good to just unplug. We don't need to watch 24/7 COVID, BLM, we hate Donald Trump, we hate this, you know. You gotta unplug from that. It's no doubt that we have skyrocketing. We were all kept in our homes for a year and just fed us, almost forced us before the election. And it's sad, it's sad that our government did that to us.
In your time on the bench, have you seen a rise in a certain demographic or certain age group where this is affecting more? So like my generation or your generation or something, is that going to rise in a certain group in your time on the bench?
Not yet. I don't see a lot of children, you know. I think CPS kind of gets a hold of them, or the parents kind of take care of it. So the youngest I'll see them is kind of like young adult teenagers, where they're kind of old enough that the parents don't have control anymore, so they're kind of leaving and doing things that are dangerous, and the parents are having to get involved. But from there up, I really don't see more of one area or another as far as age or demographic. And so that's what I'm just trying to say. Like, if this hasn't affected you where you've had to go get help, it is by the grace of God. Because everyone here and everyone out there can be the subject of a mental health difficulty. Just like you can walk outside and trip in the parking lot and break your ankle. It's no different. So no, I don't. I don't.
So I think the institutional closure, I think Kennedy's only closed all the asylums. And that has perpetuated the homeless situation. So I think there's going to be, because I can talk to legislators and I've gone in the face and in opposition, and I've proved that on several occasions actually. So you as a judge, I think, can help. I think the answer is somewhere in between. I think there's a place for institutionalization, whether it's sponsored by the state or my preference would be to revoke the nonprofit status for all these people, all these nonprofit hospitals that are not doing charity care, which they're supposed to be doing, and take care of the long-term side facility people. And I think a lot of those can benefit from inpatient, long-term psychiatric care, not necessarily medications. maybe counseling and psychotherapy. What they're getting now is they're getting visits to TRICARE. They see a nurse practitioner. They walk out on 5 different meds. They feel good for a while, and then as soon as they stop taking their meds, they're even worse off than when they started. And there are all sorts of theories out there that there's papers that are now coming out that the whole theory decrease serotonin for depression was total lie perpetuated by the pharmaceutical industry. So, and then if you look at, if you went and looked at the mechanism of action, probably 50% of most of the medicines for bipolar says we don't know.
Right.
So I think somewhere is in between is put them in the hospital, subject to long-term counseling, and get them off the streets, because we're seeing those people that have been on the streets for a long time run out of their meds. They're performing heinous crimes. And so I think that the answer is somewhere in between, not just medicating people or trying to deal with them on a PRN urgent basis.
Well, but it's not working. We're doing it now, that's for sure. We're right on the same page, and I love the depression medication that says may cause depression. Like, did you guys even read this when you put this on here?
Just one more question, please.
I think we're coming to the end of our time.
Well, okay, this is a good place then. I'm just looking around the crowd tonight, I think 90% of us believe in Jesus. 90% of us. But we haven't talked about Jesus yet. The Bible is loaded, both the Old Testament and the New Testament, with people that were just out of their minds. Crazy people. And well, this is a rhetorical question, because you already know the answer. How did Jesus happen?
He cast the demons out.
Exactly right, exactly. So we're supposed to renew our mind on a daily basis. Yeah, I mean, maybe a couple of times a day we're supposed to do that. And put the word in our minds and God. And then we're supposed to dwell on what's right, what's pure, what's lovely, what's wholesome. Not the garbage. What we have in our homes is we've got a sewer pipe. And the sewer pipe is this big, and it's called the internet. Well, people is, what was it, 0.7 in 1888? And now it's 43%. So anyway, I guess that people would need to be discipled. I guess they would. And they'd have to have a counselor. I realize that you really can't touch that in the corner. Okay, so I'm not asking, well, maybe you could, but I'm not asking you to necessarily do that. But someplace in the chink of the chain here, somebody has to pick up the stick and go, hey, wait a minute. I'm going to work with this person, and I'm going to talk with them, and I'm going to love them and counsel them, and treat them like a human, and be their friend. But it would take human to human to do it, not some, bailiff. See you later, Bob. Bye. So anyway, I don't know how, I just made a statement. I'm supposed to be asking a question. So how do you think that we could make any ground there? Because again, how can you bring that to court?
Right, so of course, for me, from the bench, that would be problematic. But again, I'm going to take it back to meeting people where they are, right? And so a lot of people who come in, they call it hyper-religiosity, right? Some people come in, they think they're God, they think they're Jesus. They're being tormented by demons. And honestly, to tell you the truth, every once in a while, the ones that come in and tell me they're tormented by demons, I thought, well, who am I to say that they're not? It's this in the Bible. There are instances. The other thing I will tell you is, I'm so bad with names. Was it Andrea Yates that killed all her children?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So when Andrea Yates, when that case happened, I was a criminal defense lawyer. And clearly, I don't have to say a terrible case. And I just hated that case. It just made me sick. It makes makes me sick today. And I couldn't think in my mind of anyone who deserves the death penalty more than that woman. I mean, really, I had just prosecuted her and persecuted her in my heart and had no grace for her whatsoever. I mean, a mother and all her children. And I didn't even care all the things they were saying about, oh, the husband didn't help, blah, blah, blah. I was like, oh, no, how do you kill your children? And so interestingly enough, George Parham, do y'all know him? He's like a lesser known criminal defense lawyer in Houston, but one of the good ones, big ones, like racehorse hands, big name ones. He came to a CLE. I didn't even know he was going to be there. I was sitting in the front, and he comes in and he's going to talk about that case. And I'm like, flipping my ear off. I don't want to hear anything about this. And he got up and he showed pictures of the kids. And I'm already, wiping my tears, thinking, why did I sit in the front? I can't get out, I can't be rude and walk out. This is like a keynote. And what he did was he was really emphasizing to the criminal defense lawyers, if you get one of these obscure, weird cases, you need to figure out how to get the jail to agree to let you bring a video camera in quickly, right when your client gets there, before they get the anti-psych medications and all this stuff. Because it's very important for the jury to see what you're seeing. And I'm still thinking, I don't care what you saw. That woman needs to be put in an electric chair. And then he said he had convinced them to do this with Miss Andrea. And he showed a video of her after she had been in there 4 or 5 days, on anti-psych medication for 4 or 5 days. And during the interview, she could hear the walls talking to her. And that was part of the case. The TV was telling her to kill her children to keep Satan from getting them. She was trying to save them. But when I saw her face, her affect, the pupils in her eyes were doing something that's not even physically possible for your body to do. I've never seen it, and I was haunted by it. And to this day, I'm haunted by it. And I will tell you, my God-honest feeling was, oh my God, that woman is possessed by the devil. If there has ever been a true statement, like with a movie or whatever, like I'm looking at it, she is not within herself. She is being controlled by something outside of her. And it really scared me. But it made me have a lot of forgiveness and sorrow for her in my heart. Not let her go sorrow, but just a lot of grace out of it. This woman was dealing with something that was beyond the court system and psychiatric meds and treatment. I really felt like she was possessed when I saw that video, me personally. Anyway. And on that note, it's been nice talking to you.
Okay, one thing. What is the name of the mental illness that is a Democratic Party? Okay. We are really like the illness, the illness.
Oh, liberalism and it's a mental illness.
Well, yeah, on steroids or something. We are so fortunate to have judges like Judge Laird. Can you imagine having to deal with this stuff day in and day out? It takes a very, very special judge, and we thank you for doing that, Bobby. Okay, well, it's that time of evening, so I suppose what we need to do is think about the fact that we're going to all go home and rethink what we just heard tonight. The next time you see somebody, and every time if you live next door, I hate next door. I hate it. every day there's some leftovers, and I guess it's kind of being gone that over tonight, but who's doing things, that are doing things that are like so unbelievable. You think, how is this happening here in Montgomery County? And, you know, it just gets weirder and weirder and weirder. So we've got to all be on alert because there's a lot of stuff out there that we don't like. Next meeting is June, I don't know what date actually is, the 5th, I think. Our guest speaker will be Mr. Hurfax. And y'all probably heard him when he came back when he was running. But he's gonna come back because he's still active. And we want to hear what he has to say. So make sure that you come next time because it should be a good crowd and it should be good information. We're glad you guys came tonight. I know that we have some new people. We usually do every time. We get so many new people sometimes it's hard. I look out and I go, have I seen this person before? Where have I seen them? Because probably they don't know where you see them. But anyway, y'all come back, bring friends. Let us know if there's any particular, yes, sir?
Could we get a hand for the mistress of the microphone who did such a wonderful job going around?
Yes, Sarah. We're talking about you. You did do a good job. Her instructions are, that just like Rick Green always told us, never give up your mic. She did an excellent job with that. Because, you know, sometimes you give people a mic and they don't do it back. They just keep talking and talking and talking. So you did a very good job. We're proud of you. It's good to have young people involved. Thank you guys for coming and we'll see you on the 5th.